always secure everything. Make sure that the websites you go to, you're using HTTPS, you know, and here it doesn't matter how much we've protected ourselves at home. You know, Equifax goes through and loses our data, 142 million Americans, you know, and it's out there and all the hackers have it. And the big question is, you know, what can we do to protect ourselves now? Now, on the CBS Evening News the other night, they were saying one thing you could do is go to the Equifax website and first of all see whether or not your information is listed as being compromised. If it is, you can call the credit card companies that you are associated with, and you can say, listen, I want you to freeze any new applications for credit cards for me for a period of time until the credit card rating companies, yeah.
Well, and that's the problem because Equifax is the largest credit card rating company.
That's
so
right.
They especially should have kept our information safe. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that fine print again. Yeah, when you enroll.
We'll make it free. Oh, we can sue them now. Okay. Well, that's good news.
One of the problems we've run into is there's too many icons on my screen. The website that Equifax sends you to. All right, I want that one over there, and I'm going to put. No, but it's not Equifax, and it's everything we warn people against. There we are.
It's a third party. Huh?
It's a third party, trustedidpremier.com.
Oh, boy.
Right off the bat, I would not trust them at all. And they want you to put in your Social Security number.
Yeah.
No! 6 digits, right. So instead of the criminals only needing 4 digits to get your identity, you're giving them 6. So now they only need 3 digits to get your identity. This is Equifax, but you don't. And it sends you to this. It sends you to this website. Yeah, that's where I started from. I started from Equifax, and when I say enroll, it sends me to this other company. Yeah.
All right. So look for.
Right, so basically if anyone was looking for credit now, you're screwed. For yourself, because you can't get your own credit. If we can get to it.
Yeah. That's not right. Check. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, what generally happens is when there's a breach, whatever company got breached gives you a free year of credit monitoring. Right. And I can't get back to Equifax now.
Well, the downside, of course, is this is a big mess for everybody, and we're going to have to pay attention to it and hope that...
and you should be using some sort of a credit monitoring system yourself. I personally use Credit Karma, which was a free sign-up, and it monitors your credit reports from all the agencies, and you can watch your things happen on your credit report, and you'll be able to see if something weird shows up. And the, what is it, free annualcreditreport.com allows you to get your actual credit report for free from each of the agencies once a year. So it looks like, let's see if we can get to this site. Yeah, freeze.equifax.com. So you can freeze your credit so no one can sign out of your credit information. Right, one free report a year. Mm-hmm. Annualcreditreport.com is the one that is authorized by the FTC. There's a lot of free credit report websites that claim to be free, but you have to sign up for a service, and then you get your credit report. But the annualcreditreport.com does give you your report for free. And it's a matter of keeping tabs on it yourself now. Don't rely on them to warn you if anything's happening, because they couldn't be relied on to keep your data safe. The big sort of bigger thing that we are afraid of is the Equifax. There we are. They didn't find out there was a breach for about 2 months, so we don't know how the bad guys were mucking about in their system. When they did find out about it, they didn't tell the public for another 2 months. So this actually happened in May. And they say they were working with law enforcement, and they hired an outside security firm. Well, maybe you should have done that first. And they still haven't said how it happened or what was actually taken. But one of the disconcerting things is several of the high-tier corporate executives cashed in about $2 million worth of stock a couple of days, $3 million now, a couple of days before the announcement was made public to the general public. Mm-hmm. Well, and if they didn't know, that was right. That was even more stupid because it had been happening for 4 months already. Uh-huh. They should have known.
Yeah, I think there should be some lawsuits there.
Well, there have been bills to require companies to disclose to the public, and it keeps getting shot down by the Republicans. Well, so right now there's no government law requiring a public disclosure.
This is not the first time that Equifax has been hacked either. Yep. So why didn't they straighten that out after the first time? They don't.
And
have
if it was
excuses.
A mistake, they need to have an outside security firm audit their security more frequently to be able to do that. And the whole credit reporting is screwed up anyway. You can get false things on your credit report. If somebody has a name similar to you, or a social security number is 1 digit off and it's typed wrong at the other end, you can get so many wrong information on your credit report already that you should have been looking out. So if you're not subscribing to any credit monitoring system or doing something to monitor your credit, you should be. Let alone a breach, just ordinary accidents happen. George? I ran into that with a car loan too.
So it took 8 months of this, and nobody could help the cash.
Yeah, cleaning up a mistake on your credit report is horrible.
So I called the consumer. I sent a note to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and you can attach documents to files. So I had kept notes all along. So I sent them. I explained what the problem was, and I attached my notes. The next morning, I got a call from Chase. The next morning, saying, "You still got a problem?"
Suddenly they'll clear it out.
Within a day.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, right?
Yeah, find your letter that you paid off your mortgage. Or hopefully that bank is still around and may still have it in their records. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So another. Go ahead.
To see if you've been compromised.
Well, Equifax.com, and that actually will send you to EquifaxSecurity2017.com. But just starting at Equifax.com will get you there. Unfortunately, I've been having a lot of trouble getting to their website. I think they're being inundated by 140 million people.
Well, yeah, they are, and so their servers are having a tough time.
Well, LifeLock is a monitoring service. If there's a problem, they will tell you.
They're the same as Credit Karma and all the other guys.
Right, but I think their fees are higher. Yeah. Well, so the breach happened. The bad guys haven't done anything with the data yet. So companies like Credit Karma, LifeLock, the other monitoring companies, they don't know anything happened yet because the bad guys haven't started selling the information, or there haven't been a mass of new credit applications. Generally, when a breach like this happens, the bad guys try to keep it as quiet as they can so the good guys don't find it and plug the hole. And then the average folks don't know about it and be on their guard. Sometimes it's years later. The LinkedIn breach was kind of interesting. In 2012, LinkedIn got breached and lost 100 million accounts. In 2016, that data showed up on sale networks. So 4 years later, the bad guys started selling the data. Which, was that me doing that? Yeah, it is. So sometimes the bad guys trade it among themselves. Sometimes they try to ransom it back to the main company. You never know what's going to happen and when. And so that's why you want to sort of keep an eye on your credit yourself. The one thing I've liked about Credit Karma is it shows you the actual number that the companies use to your score, right. And it's free. I've been using it for a year or so. They have apps for iPhone and Android. I'm not sure how they're making their money. But although one of the big things they keep doing is sending me ads for new credit cards with lower interest rates. Okay, maybe. So that they're probably getting a kickback from that credit card company to deliver those ads. But they haven't. They have a good reputation. There haven't been any big hits against them that I've heard about. One of the other places to go to, we've mentioned a few times, is haveibeenpwned.com. Put in your email address, and it will show you if your email address has been used in a hacker breach or just a regular data breach. I know my work address has been. So almost 5 billion accounts have been breached over the years, A billion on Yahoo alone. If you have a Yahoo account, your Yahoo password has been breached because they lost 1 billion accounts in one leak and 500 million accounts in another leak. And one of the problems is, since Yahoo is such an old company, many people use their Yahoo address as a fallback for Gmail or for Apple or for Amazon or PayPal. And so the bad guys will go to Yahoo, get into your email, and then try a Gmail account and send a password reset to the Yahoo account they're in. So you want to be careful about that. So I know my work address has been pwned in the Adobe breach because we're Adobe partners, and so I work with Adobe. So Adobe lost 153 million accounts. So never use the same password on more than one website. So my password at Adobe has been lost, and if I use that same password anywhere else, the bad guys will know that and try it again. What I find kind of interesting is that some spammers have been breached. So the bad guys aren't even safe from other bad guys. And so 105 million addresses were breached from a spam list. 2 different spam lists have been breached. The LinkedIn breach was 164 million. So 5 different breaches of my email address. Anyone have an email address they want me to check? Yep, so yours was breached on LinkedIn. So when it happened in 2012 and when it happened again in 2016, LinkedIn sent emails to all their members saying, change your password. If you haven't changed your password to LinkedIn, you should change it because the bad guys have it. And that's part of the problem. You may not have been logged into that site for years. You may have done it just for a few months and then left. But the account is still there. The password is still available. So if you use that same password somewhere else, the bad guys know that password, and so they'll try the password they found from LinkedIn. They'll try it on Amazon and eBay and Citibank and PayPal until they find it. There's a new service that's a little sketchy, but these guys are pretty trustworthy. You can put in a password and see if that password is in those 5 billion leaked passwords. So I'm going to put in monkey, and yes, the password monkey has been breached in those 5 billion accounts. You may not want to use it with any of your current passwords because this website is going to now get that password. Although this is a JavaScript that hashes it and it looks at the other end, so it's pretty safe. But don't use any current password. Yeah,
you don't know if they're putting it into your database or not.
Right. They're probably not, but don't use a current password. But you put an old password in that you don't use anymore. And the problem becomes what we call a dictionary attack. The bad guys will feed every word in the dictionary into a password field. So if your password is a word, it's been breached, period. Every word has been breached. So your password should not be a word. It should be multiple words, and possibly with some numbers between the letters or the words so that it doesn't make a real word. So one of the big passwords that we heard about is, what is it? There is no fate. That's a pretty long password. It has been pwned. Nope, I spelled it wrong. Because that's a famous quote from one of the Terminator movies. There is no fate but what we make. So in addition to dictionary attacks, Roget's Thesaurus, Bartlett's familiar quotes. If your password is a word, it will be breached easily. So make sure it's longer. Make it several words. Horse, monkey, stapler, Boy Scout. Nice long password, almost impossible to guess. Almost impossible to breach in the life of the universe. A little hard to type, yeah. So we're a little hard to remember. So that's where you use the password manager. Safari and the Mac have a keychain built in. If you're cross-platform, you can use one of the cross-platform password generators, 1Pass, LastPass, KeyPass, and that will generate a long password for you. You don't know, and you don't need to know, because then that software types it in for you. Safari makes a 25-digit random uppercase, lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols password that you'll have no way of remembering. You can look it up when you need to in the Safari keychain.
Now, what about that guy that was saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, you
Yes.
don't have to have a long password"?
The NIST guy.
Yeah.
So ages ago, the NIST, the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, set up a rule basically saying you should change. Here it is. Bill Burr was his name. You should change your password every 90 days. It should be uppercase, lowercase, letters, numbers, symbols. He apologized and now is sorry for the password hell he's put everyone through. And other security analysts were saying that doesn't make any sense. So you change your password every 90 days in case someone got your password. What if they got it 89 days ago? Then now they've got 89 days to muck about in the system with your password. So you really should change your password every day. Well, what if they got it this morning? Then they've had all day to muck about your system, so you change it every hour. So changing your password randomly like that doesn't really add to security. And most people then end up with patterns that are very easy to guess. So, you know, password 1, and then password 2, then password 3, then password 4. And so by looking, researchers that have done statistical analysis of the breached passwords see these patterns. When a site requires a number, it's almost always a 1, or the current year. When a site requires a capital letter, it's almost always the first character of the password. And so these types of password rules didn't really add to security, and people went out of their way to work around them. One of the security podcasts I listened to, the guy overheard someone at another table at like a Starbucks complaining about his company makes him change the password every 90 days, and he can't use any of the last 5 passwords. Yeah. And so he changes it 6 times to make it back to the one that it really was. And so his password, in essence, never changed. So the guy that made these requirements is apologizing, finally realizing with the crackers, he's 72 years old now. He has regretted the changes because they didn't really help much and made it almost worse because people worked their way around the system to not do it. So that was one question, right?
Yeah.
Keith. Right. Security questions are bad because most of the time they are public knowledge or easily guessed. When what's your favorite car? Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Chrysler. There's not that many choices. And so lie, but remember how you lie. What's your favorite car? Blue. But social engineering figures that out. Adam is online waiting for us.
Okay.
Social engineering has proved that the bad guys will call Apple and Amazon and Google and PayPal and, hi, I'm Bill. I can't remember my password. All right, security question. What's your favorite car? Oh, I don't know. Was it Dodge, Chevy, Ford? I don't remember. And are able to convince the people to change the password anyway. Yes, some security questions want them capitalized, some don't. Yep. Yeah, when it asks for a city, did I put the state in too? Or your favorite band, did I say the Beatles or just Beatles? And so we're seeing more and more people getting away from, or trying to get away from passwords and going to biometric. SQRL. And there is a new security system coming on called Squirrel that Steve Gibson, who's a well-known security researcher, is working on, and he's trying to replace the entire password system with a QR code that you have on your phone or you click with your computer, and it sets up a separate identity and a separate incomprehensibly long password, 256-bit password, with every single service has a separate password, which is what you need to do in case there's a breach at the other end. One of the things he reluctantly added was a forgot my master password thing, because that's how the bad guys get in. You forgot your master password, so the other end has to have a way to let you in. So he added a thing where you can print your 256-bit password, keep that in a safe place if you do forget the master password. So your master password needs to be a phrase, but it encodes it as 256 bits. you can type that in if you ever need to again. So the problem we're seeing is that if you want to have a password recovery procedure, it means the bad guys could scam the recovery procedure to get into your account. So if you want to take the onus on yourself to remember your password and never forget it, then you can. In fact, some people just put gobbledygook into the question, so you have no way of answering them anyway. George. Yep. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so the bad guys will call up your credit card company and say, I've moved, send me a new card at this address.
Mm-hmm.
Or I got divorced, send the card in my name. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. That's really awful.
Yeah, they'll never pay your bill. Yeah, they'll just get it. So facial recognition, Adam's going to talk about, and I'm bringing him in shortly. There's Adam. While we finish up our Q&A. Oh, I got to see how our audio is going to work.
And not only that, but did you want to have Adam go first and then you do your thing?
Yeah, we're going to have
afterwards?
Adam go first.
All right. Maybe we should take our break now so that you can finish setting things up with Adam.
Yep, we can do that.
Okay. Quick
Let me
question in
see.
the back.
I'm trying to get the audio, Adam. I don't hear
Time
you
for
yet.
What?
You can hear me though. Not if you can hear me. Okay.
Why don't you ask later?
I see what's wrong. My volume is down too low.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break here while Steve gets his act together with Adam, and then we'll come back in and Adam will give his talk.
All right.
And then after that, Steve will give his talk, and then you can ask whatever questions you want after that.
I want to change cameras so that you can see the audience. I had this set up earlier, and of course it never remembers how I set things up. Audio, video, camera. There we go, camera. I can use this camera.
Woo!
There, now you can see the audience. You can see the audience leaving.
Cookies, clearly.
Yep. Cupcakes tonight.
Cupcakes, man. Knew I should have come up.
Yeah, the board was sorry you didn't physically come here because they wanted to go out.
Yeah, well, I said I was actually pushing a little to get. I had another board meeting to go to, in fact, so I was pushing to get out, get back in time for 7:30 even. So.
Yep. And we gotta maybe stop doing it in September when Apple's announcements are.
Got plenty to talk about, that's for sure.
Yeah, plenty to talk about. Yeah.
I've been going nonstop since 2 different yesterday morning. So.
Yep.
Oh boy. But no, I mean mostly good stuff. So it'll be fun to talk about. I definitely don't have any kind of presentation though. When you are pushing nonstop to write everything up, didn't have time for a whole nother thing yet. But
yep. There we are.
Yay!
Yep.
I will say my video is frozen now, Steve.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm not seeing anyone move.
Nobody's walking. All right. Let me switch cameras again and see if it comes back. Is there an easy switch camera button, or I have to go into preferences?
I don't think
preferences.
I think Skype just used.
Okay. All right.
There's the stairs.
That's the empty podium. There we are. Now people are moved a minute and then stopped.
Yeah, I got like I'm getting like stop motion animation now.
All right, let's try the other camera, and I'll point that outward. It wasn't frozen. Nobody was moving.
Oh, people look much better now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a blizzard tonight, at least.
It's actually kind of muggy here.
Yeah.
After like 2.5, 3 weeks of it being freezing.
Yeah, we were joking that summer's back.
Yeah.
All right, let me make sure my Ustream is working, or YouTube. Yep, audio is making it to YouTube also. Alrighty. Yeah, I read I think it was on CNN, they did a thing about Apple announces new phones and the internet reacts. And it was basically a summary of a dozen other blogs on, you know, good, bad, I'll never buy an Apple product again, you know, how can I charge so much? Oh, isn't it so cool?
I will admit, I find the I'll never buy, you know, like, you know, it's a huge mistake, I'll never buy an Apple product again. Do these people really have literally no idea, or are they just trolling?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, geez, something you haven't actually seen or touched yet, and you're already declaring it's the worst product ever.
Yeah.
You know, come on, people, you're just not real.
I read someone railing against the Animoji. Emojis are supposed to convey, you know, emotion. They're not supposed to move. I hate it.
I think Animoji are just stupid, but that's a different problem.
Yeah. Just if you don't like them, don't use them.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just like the whole stickers and messages.
Yep.
I can't say I've ever gotten a sticker or wanted to send a sticker, so, but I don't care. They're just dumb, you know.
Yep.
Teenagers want, I mean, not even teenagers, 11-year-olds want to use them. More power to them, whatever.
Yeah.
People need the talking pile of poo. Well, gee, you know, truth in advertising. That's what I say.
Yeah. I got a kick out of Tim using the alien.
Yes. That was good. Take me to your leader. Wait, I am your leader.
Yep.
I will say the one thing that is a little funny about Apple is that individually, I think they, I mean, particularly Craig and Tim do seem to have a sense of humor. But you don't get much of that in the products anymore. There used to be more little clever, you know, like the Easter eggs and things like that. You just don't see that in the products, which is a little sad.
They've gone too big business.
Yeah, I think it's really true. And so, you know, they will only kind of let themselves do it when it's, you know, kind of personal and in person in the keynotes. I mean, I thought the whole person doing the stand-up, taking the Apple Watch call while on a stand-up paddleboard was great. Yeah. You know, I did want it to fall in. I really did want to see that happen. Just because, you know, it would have brought the house down if she's like, and I need to end this call, splash.
And then they can say, and of course, the Series 3 is water resistant.
Precisely,
or waterproof on this one now.
Marketing move. And she would have gone viral on the internet.
Yeah.
That said, I haven't had the time to check. I do wonder if Craig Federighi balking like a chicken has gone viral. He did a good chicken.
Yep. So for everyone else who hasn't seen the keynote, it's available on Apple's website. You can skim through it. A bunch of websites even now have a watch the keynote in 8 minutes, where it just goes through all the highlights.
Well, I will say some of this stuff, particularly Phil Schiller, he's talking at least 1.5, if not double speed. He just whipped through stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, you could, and a lot of it was highly technical too. So you couldn't even really parse it. He was saying it so fast. But yeah,
did you see the size of the font they had to use when they're listing all the features at the end?
Yep, we screenshot those. Yeah. I mean, I will say, being able to just, you know, frame rate through the keynote is necessary while we're doing our writing, because it just is that it goes so fast you cannot take notes.
Yep. Crazy.
So you've been talking about Equifax already?
Yeah. What to do about it? And apparently there was a story out, and we talked about it on our radio show Saturday, that if you signed up for the free credit monitoring, you waived your right to sue them.
Yeah.
And they have apparently removed that clause.
Yeah.
So what happens to people that signed up before they removed it?
So there's some guy has just set up a chat bot that will help you sue them in small claims court in every local area.
Yeah.
So I think that's gonna, I mean, honestly, this is like Rich Mogul, our security editor, did a post about it, and he basically just said, we're all screwed.
Yep.
This information is out. It will never stop being out, unless they are going to provide you with free credit monitoring forever, and allow like because there used to be companies that would monitor your credit for you. They check for fraud alerts every 90 days and renew. And apparently the credit agencies sued them out of existence. So so basically this is one of the classic places where we are not the customer, we are the product.
Yep. And this, especially this data, which was especially important to keep private, because that's what all the bad guys want. That's the treasure trove.
Yeah. And I mean, this is again one of the problems you run into when you do not have some form of privacy rights built into legislation. These companies could just say, trust us, trust us, trust us. There was even something today, apparently it was what was it? They had some other server. What was it? Equifax was forced to pull offline a huge database of consumer data guarded only by the credentials admin.
Lovely.
I mean, these people are a bunch of morons.
So yeah, and they had to hire an outside security firm. Why didn't you do that earlier? You should be doing that all the time anyway, an outside audit.
I was going to say, I mean, for people who have this kind of data, again, this falls into the category of they should be under constant audit because they have too much power.
Yeah.
And too much information that they really should not be having. And honestly, the IRS has it too, and they should be under constant audit as well.
Yeah, someone had asked a question earlier about why didn't existing credit monitoring companies tell you this had happened? And basically they didn't know yet. The bad guys haven't done anything with it yet.
Right. Yeah, I mean, one of the there's two basic customers for all of this stuff. One is foreign intelligence agencies, and the other is organized crime. And just because you have data doesn't mean you use it. You may be waiting to use it. You may use it in a very targeted fashion, and it does have something of a lifespan. The longer you last, like credit card numbers, for instance, won't last forever. But Social Security numbers, hey, those are good forever. You can just hold on to those until such time as you want to use them if you're a bad guy. So, of course, they're not going to be using a lot of this stuff. It's the same thing with the security breaches, the security exploits on the phones, in iOS and whatnot, where just because one is found doesn't mean they're going to use it because they may want to target some, activist in Saudi Arabia or something like that. I mean, that has explicitly happened. They know that once they use the gun, they don't get to use it again, so they wait for the one shot.
Yep. Well, and we were talking about the LinkedIn breach in 2012, and then 2016 came around and it showed up on the black sites. So they were selling the data again and got everyone upset again.
Yep. No, it's just bad. And I mean, what Rich actually concluded in our piece was just that you can't protect yourself. There just is no legitimate way. We have to change the system. Because the Social Security number is a terrible unique identifier. It's everywhere. It's badly protected. It's short. I mean, it's a pattern. If you are born in roughly the same time and place, it gets really easy to detect them, those sort of things. So it's just a mess.
What about LifeLock or the other commercial reporting agencies?
So. My understanding from what Rich was saying was that most of those have gone away. I'm not familiar with LifeLock specifically. Let's see.
Well, that was the one where the owner kept saying, "Here's my Social Security number, breach away," and they do all the time, and he's always having trouble, clearing his credit history. I use Credit Karma, which does seem to be free. You just get ads for new credit cards all the time. And it gives you a score and shows you what's happening on your credit.
Yeah.
And then we did find that annualcreditreport.com is the one that the FTC recommends using for a free credit report every year?
So you can get a free credit report, and that's fine, but then you have to be tracking down everything that shows up on it.
Right.
So the thing that Rich points out in our Tidbits article is there's two things you can do. One is the fraud alert, and that's free for 90 days, but you have to manually renew it all the time. And that's, I guess, the thing that just doesn't happen as much. It's hard to keep going. The other thing you can do is you can actually do a credit freeze, and that works well and is free and doesn't need to be renewed, but can be a real problem if, say, you're trying to get a new job and they're doing a credit check on you for background employment history or something like that, because you have to actually approve every use of it, and that can be problematic. So, but I think basically what it comes down to is, and I haven't honestly with Apple doing what they've been doing the last couple of days, I haven't had a chance to really think this through, but what I suspect we're going to do is not very much to begin with. You want to protect all your accounts, all your important accounts with two-factor authentication and strong passwords and all that. But at the point where we see any kind of problem, that's where we'll probably, institute one of the credit freezes. That we're not applying for loans or getting jobs or anything like that often enough that I don't think it will be a problem. But certainly, if you ever have someone actually stealing your identity, you definitely want one of those credit freezes. Although, actually, Rich points out there's also, if you have had an identity theft, if you've been in a victim of identity theft, then you can get an extended fraud alert that lasts for 70 years. But it's only if you've already been a victim of identity theft. I don't know the details on that yet. So ugly stuff.
Yep. And so I think pretty much everyone is back by now. So why don't we do our formal introduction? Although
everyone knows me anyway.
This is Adam Engst. He is the founder and editor-in-chief at Tidbits.com, one of the oldest Macintosh newsletter in the beginning on the internet. And we've been talking about the Equifax breach and some of the things that you can do, and the remediation that you might be able to do with credit freezes and whatnot. And so I'd recommend everyone going to tidbits.com and checking out the stories there. And I guess we'll turn it over to Adam and let you add it.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. So.
Yeah.
What's that, Rick?
Well, do you have a screen to share, or just your lovely face?
Just me. As I said, when Apple does these, we didn't know, obviously, when we set this meeting up. What, Rick? 4 months ago?
Yeah.
That it was going to be the day after Apple's announcement. And we knew it would be sort of roughly in the same time frame, but I have been working literally nonstop since the announcement started to write up all this stuff for Tidbits and our Tidbits Content Network service for consultants. So I'm very familiar with everything, but I did not have time to put together any slides or anything like that. So all that said, as Steve was commenting beforehand, lots of websites have condensed the 2-hour keynote down to 8 minutes or whatever. But I will say it's worth watching. Feel free to fast forward, particularly through highly geeky technical parts. But they did a good job, particularly at the beginning. Tim Cook, had a very nice tribute to Steve Jobs because it was the first event in the Steve Jobs Theater on Apple's new Apple Park campus, and then talked very nicely about what Apple's doing to help the people who have been displaced and hurt by the various hurricanes in Texas and Florida. And then they just jumped right in, and I don't know if this was the biggest one. It's certainly not the biggest announcement Apple's ever done, but man, they build it up. So the 4 things that got announced, which you probably more or less know about already by now. We got the Apple Watch Series 3, the Apple TV 4K, the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, and then the iPhone 10. And so it was a roller coaster, and the Apple did, pretty much in that order, actually, so they did the stuff that was the easiest to get out of the way first, and then finished with the iPhone 10 on a trademarked and one more thing. Of Of course, everyone sort of knows about what's coming ahead of time because the closer you get to the actual announcement, the rumors are pretty neat. They get closer and closer. But all that said, starting with the Apple Watch. So the Apple Watch, we've had 3 models. We have 3 models now. There was the original one, then the Series 2. Apple sort of slightly tweaked the original one to call it the Series 1. And now we have the Series 3. And the big difference that Apple's been getting into is just how much it can do away from its iPhone. So the Series 1, which I have here on my wrist and on my iPhone here, Series 1, not so much. It tells time. That's, it's about it. I mean, you can fiddle with some of the, the heart rate stuff and whatnot, but when you're away from the iPhone, such as if you were going for a run or biking, or maybe you're at the beach, so it's a little wet, you don't want to have your iPhone with you, that kind of stuff. Yeah, Series 1 can't do very much at all. Series 2, which Apple came out with last year, added GPS capabilities. So what they discovered was, and this is the switch from the Series 1 to the Series 2, was that, remember they thought the Apple Watch was going to be this incredible fashion statement, and they had the gold Apple Watch editions, which were $17,000. Yeah, that didn't last. Turns out the Apple Watch, its niche is fitness. That people like to use it to track their workouts, see how many calories they're burning. We'll ignore the fact that information is pretty much worthless, and just do active stuff. So that's really where they've been focusing. So the Series 2 adds GPS, so you can go for a run and use Strava or the like to be able to track your run or your bike ride. The Series 3 takes it one step further and says it's got a cellular chip in it. It can do anything that it can do when it's tethered to your iPhone, and it's not tethered to your iPhone. Now, we'll see when it actually comes out if that's 100% true. My suspicion is that there will be certain things, particularly configuration-y things, that you may still need to do from the iPhone. But for standard everyday usage, they showed people making phone calls. The best one for people who weren't in the room when I was talking about this before, during the keynote, the guy makes a phone call on his Apple Watch to an Apple employee who is doing stand-up paddleboarding somewhere warm and sunny. She's in the middle of the water talking on her Apple Watch. And, man, we so wanted her to fall in just to prove that it's waterproof. But it was pretty impressive that it worked, and I don't know if the quality is specifically better. I haven't, frankly, noticed very good quality for the phone calls on the Apple Watch Series 1 or 2, but it's one of those things that's a little hard to test formally. And
it almost sounded like he went a little bit off script there and said something about all the mics that he's got on himself versus the other people.
Yeah, he did say something like, he sounds great because he's mic'd, actually double mic'd. And I'm like, okay, so you're set up really well. So the one thing, again, you guys got to watch this, at least the beginning of the presentation. If you just go to apple.com and scroll down, you can get to the whole video there. They have this incredible screen behind the presenters, which must be at least 30 to 40 feet tall. And they have big pictures of the interior of Apple stores and people and things like that. But the effect is the screen is so high resolution. This must be an amazing state-of-the-art digital projector that the presenters look like little dolls in front of like they're standing like on the tops of the tables at a giant Apple store or something. It's really disconcerting at first because the pictures are so good on the screen that they look lifelike. But in any event, so the Apple Watch Series 3, you can make phone calls. You can talk to Siri. So this is one of the things I've always wanted. I tend to think of things I want to do while I'm out riding my bike, and I can't use Siri to make a reminder on my wrist because I don't have the iPhone with me. You can get calendar notifications syncing through, and you'll even be able to stream all of Apple Music over the cellular network to your watch, and then wirelessly to AirPods. So it's pretty impressive stuff, and I think we're going to see, people are just going to like that. The cellular capabilities, if you are someone who has been frustrated by having to carry your iPhone places you didn't want to carry it, that might be a reason to upgrade. So other than that, the only really big changes that you might notice are it's got a faster processor, which will make it react a little more quickly, which is nice, and it will allow Siri to talk back to you. So previously, when you talk to Siri, you just get text on the screen, and Siri in the Apple Watch Series 3 will be able to talk back to you, which is kind of cool. But that said, if you have a Series 1 that's serving you just fine, probably you don't need to upgrade. Series 2 that was serving you just fine, probably don't need to upgrade. If you wanna take your iPhone, your Apple Watch out on a run without carrying your iPhone, that's a reason to upgrade. The Series 2 has gone away. So we just have the Series 3 on one side, and we still have the Series 1 available at a cheaper price. So the Series 1 is now $249, and the Series 3, you can get either the cellular one for $399, or one that just has the GPS. It's sort of like the Series 2, no cellular capabilities, for $329. So those are the choices. The one unfortunate part about the cellular Apple Watch Series 3 is also that it's going to cost you $10 a month for the cellular capabilities. So at first we had been told by AT&T that it was going to be free, but the guy who told us that, the rep who told us that later said, no, I was wrong. So that's too bad. And I think it's doubly bad, just to editorialize briefly, because if anything, you're probably using less cellular bandwidth when you're using your watch than if you had your phone with you. So, I mean, all they're doing is seeing this as yet another reason to charge you for something that they're actually using no more of their bandwidth to accommodate you. So that's a little frustrating. The other bit of new hardware that it's got a barometric altimeter. So kind of a nice thing, it'll be able to tell your relative elevation by telling the changes in barometric pressure. And then, I don't know, Steve can show you this later. One thing that's really odd is that on the cellular capable ones, it has a red dot on the digital crown, which I think is really kind of garish, honestly. You got this nice, sleek, metallic thing, and then a cartoonish red dot on it. I don't know why they did that. So, one of the nice thing, however, is all of this technology they've shoehorned in, the cellular capabilities, the barometric altimeter, all this stuff. It doesn't take up any more space, or rather, it takes up, 0.25 millimeters more on the back crystal. So the part that touches your wrist is 0.25 millimeters thicker, which is just impressive. I mean, the ability, the hardware engineering that Apple's putting into that is just astonishing. All that, battery life, Apple is reporting it's the same. We'll see. Obviously, if you're talking on the phone a lot, that's not true. They are saying if you want to have a phone call on your wrist, it's going to last an hour. So I think that the more phone calls you make, the shorter your battery life will be. But otherwise, they're still claiming that that can last the full day, which more or less does in my experience. So that's pretty good. New bands. New colors, all the usual stuff. The fancy dancy ones, the Hermes ones, and the Apple Watch Edition ceramic ones that are like $1,200 are still available. I don't consider them particularly interesting, but the people who feel the need to accessorize as a fashion thing that's going to be obsolete in a year or two can still do so. So, any questions about the Apple Watch before we move on?
Any new features in watchOS 4 that stand out?
So watchOS 4 is interesting. They didn't talk about it too much on the keynote, which is why I sort of forgot about it slightly. But yes, watchOS 4 will be coming out September 19th, and so you can get it for all the existing watches. Probably the most interesting feature in it is the Siri watch face. Now, when Apple talks about Siri, Apple is thinking of it as an artificial intelligent personal assistant. So Apple doesn't see Siri just as the voice or what you talk to. And so when you get up the Siri watch face on your phone, pulling mine up here, come on, it tries to show you what is happening in the near future, and it draws from various data sources to give you information about your day as it's coming, as it has been. Actually, you can use the digital crown to sort of go back and forth in time. So, for instance, you can see what you can always scroll up to see what the current weather is like, and you can scroll down. Often it will show you sundown and sunset. It'll show you what the weather forecast for tomorrow is going to be like, and how many calendar events you have. The one thing I really didn't like about it, but you can adjust, is that it can take information from Apple News and from photos and from stocks and things like that. Personally, I really, really, really do not want news headlines on my wrist. Having to look at my wrist and see what's going on, it was just pure torture. So I was super happy to realize that you could turn that off in the face settings. Similarly, the stock information, it's the Dow Jones, which is a completely meaningless stock collection. So there's absolutely no reason to ever look at it. It's not reflective of anything. So again, not something that I was wanted to see on my wrist. So that's that's one of the really big things. They added a bunch of workout stuff. It's faster to start workouts. There's new workout types. There's high intensity interval training. It's easier to go from one workout to another. So if you're going to run, then bike, then swim. Well, if you swim, then bike, then run. But if you're going to do triathlons, you can do better timing of the various types of events. It's still not, speaking as a competitive athlete, you're still really going to, anyone who's serious about it is really going to get a Garmin. The Garmin sport watches are just way better for actual athletes. But for people who just want to get a workout, WatchOS 4 and the workout app and the activity rings, it's good stuff. So let me think. Anything else major in WatchOS 4? There's a new heart rate app, which they actually showed off at the keynote, which sounds like it's going to do some really interesting things. And Apple's actually participating in a heart rate study with Stanford, I think, to try to learn more about how people's hearts work, such that they can alert you if you're starting to have some problems with your fibrillation or whatnot. And it's kind of impressive that they're going to be able to do some proactive warnings about some of this stuff in the future. So we'll see where that goes. But for anyone who's interested in the Apple Watch, this is going to be true of all of the new stuff, pretty much. You can pre-order on September 15th, so on Friday. And you can, that'll probably be at midnight, so the usual waking up early kind of stuff. And then everything will be shipping a week later on September 22nd. So that's if you're interested in getting a new one.
And we had a question, Doug?
Yeah.
Does the watch work with Bluetooth, or is it all Wi-Fi?
It is exactly the same as before in terms of that. So yes, it does work with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. I can't remember. I'd have to look at the specs. I can't remember. Apple has started moving to Bluetooth 5. And is this one of the ones that did that?
And the new iPhone did.
Yeah, I'd have to look, just double check the spec. But Bluetooth 5, basically longer range, less power. So it's good, longer range, more throughput. Sorry, not less power. Probably less power too. But so hopefully it'll work better. I haven't had too much trouble with Bluetooth on the watch, honestly. But Bluetooth in general is known to be flaky. And Apple has done some custom stuff with their W chips. I think this is a W2 chip that tries to improve what Bluetooth normally can do. Bluetooth is just, as I said, it's normally a little flaky. So I use an Apple Watch with actually, well, I don't have AirPods yet, but this tiny little one-ear earbud, and so seems to work just fine as long as I have the Apple Watch on my right wrist, and the earbud goes in my right ear, because Bluetooth doesn't have a lot of range and it breaks up if I'm in the middle. So, any other questions?
Cool. George? So
I couldn't quite hear.
Yeah, one of the George is saying that he had an was it one? So Series 0.
Yes,
the battery swole and the face lifted off of it.
Oh, that's surprising. I haven't heard of that before. So what has happened, and this happened to a bunch of them, is on the back, this kind of back crystal is actually glued on, and that's it. And the glue wore out. And so this happened to one of the watches that we had. My son was using it. He's like, honestly, I didn't do anything. It just came off. But Apple has a repair program for that, so you can just send the watch in, and they will fix it free of charge. The battery one I had not heard of, but lithium-ion batteries this is a known thing that sometimes they expand a little bit. When they expand, they tend to pop up because there's no tolerances in these things. I mean, these are packed, I would say within an inch of their lives, but in fact it's within fractions of a millimeter of their lives. So as soon as anything swells for whatever reason, it's going to mess up those tolerances.
Yeah, Apple's got a repair extension for that also, swollen batteries on first gen.
Okay. Yeah. Apple's been pretty good about things like that have been, like, oh yeah, that's our bad, we'll just fix it. It's happening.
It must have been widespread enough that enough people complained that they found there was a defect. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the watch got hot. Yep.
That's a hint that you got a bad battery. So.
Yeah. It's a runaway chemical reaction that's boiling the capacitance fluid inside the battery. Is it the same battery? Do you know? In the new one, we don't know yet until I fix it, tears it apart.
Yeah. My suspicion is that the Apple has probably done a little bit more with the battery just because they've got the same battery life while doing a lot more stuff. So, so interestingly, we'll get to this, but like the iPhone 10, which has, it's basically the same physical size as the iPhone 8, but it's a little bit bigger. But I think because it's just a little bit bigger, I think Apple filled that space with more battery. I mean, batteries are not like rectangular objects anymore in a lot of these things. They're kind of mashed in there because Apple's just trying to use as much space as they can. And so that's a lot of why batteries stopped being replaceable in the MacBooks, for instance, that they could use a lot more space if they didn't have to have it in a removable section. So I think that anytime they can get a little bit more space into something and get a little bit bigger battery, they're going to do that now.
Cool.
Okay, let's move on.
One more question.
Go ahead.
Can you use the watch instead of the phone?
That's a good question, and I do not believe so. No. So, for instance, or I shouldn't say that. You can use it instead of an iPhone, but you have to have an iPhone that it is paired to. So it can take a call, but it is the same number as your iPhone. So it is not a standalone device. It is merely capable of working in a largely untethered way. And so, if you have as long as you have an iPhone that it can pair with, I mean, you can't set up an Apple Watch without using an iPhone. And that's certainly true in the past. I strongly suspect it'll be true in the future as well. And so basically what's happened is that the iPhone has become much more of an independent accessory, but it's still an accessory, if that answers the question. And
if battery life isn't that good when you're making only phone calls, then you probably couldn't use it, yeah.
Yeah, but no one makes phone calls anymore. That's so last century.
You can leave the iPhone home, go out with the watch, and come back. Yep.
Absolutely.
And, that's a question. Will it ring in both places, and can you answer it either place?
I would assume it would. I would assume so. Apple is actually. I mean, I'm sure as people who have done things where they've connected their iPhones to their Macs via the various settings that Apple provides, you can get a phone call and every damn device in your office rings. So. I suspect that yes, everything will ring in the same place in both places.
Yep.
So,
all right, one last question.
Yeah.
So the traditional mechanical watches that wind themselves when you move your arm, will we see anything like that come? And I would kind of doubt it because of the energy that it would need to do that. The energy density in that watch battery is probably pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. It's burning the other guy's George's wrist, right? This thing is putting out serious heat. So the engineering that goes into those self-winding watches is amazing, but it's also amazing because it's how little power it actually gets from that.
You have to be moving your arm all day long.
Your arm around, not that much power. So to be able to power this thing requires some serious chemistry, and that is one of the. My son is in Cornell Engineering, and we were talking with another friend who's an engineer. He's like, go into electrical power systems engineering. Everything is batteries and electricity in the future. Just that's where we're going with everything. And I mean, I don't know if you've heard this, but I think 2040, both France and the UK have outlawed gasoline and diesel cars. So, China's talking about doing it. California's pondering it. So, in 15 to 20 years, we won't have fossil fuel powered cars. That's the amount of push that we're getting into battery and electricity technologies. So, yeah, it's going to all go in that direction. Okay, on to the Apple TV. So, the Apple TV. How many people here have Apple TVs?
How many have? You're only seeing the middle center of this. I
can see about.
Everyone on the outside, move in a little bit so we can see you.
Yeah, I don't get the aisles, so.
Yeah.
Any event, so the Apple TV. So Apple comes out with the 4th generation Apple TV, and it's really cool. I mean, it can have apps. It's basically running iOS. The Siri remote. Well, it has some industrial design problems, but it's super neat that you can talk to Siri. You've got this touchpad-y thing, and then Apple sits on it and really doesn't do squat for quite a long time. In the meantime, the Rokus and the Amazon Fire TVs and all this stuff, everyone else just keeps pushing new features, and Apple does zilch. So at the event yesterday, they did introduce the new Apple TV, and they give it right away in the name. It's now the Apple TV 4K. And what's interesting about it is that it supports 4K HDR video. Now, the 4K basically, it means higher resolution, and HDR stands for high dynamic range, and in essence it means more colors. So when you combine, 4K is good, but when you combine 4K and HDR, you get a really nice picture. But here's the problem. You get a really nice picture if you have a 4K HDR capable TV, which means probably that you've bought your TV in the last year, maybe 2 years. It's just wasn't likely before that. And so that's thing one. And thing two is you have to have 4K HDR content. Now, Apple only has control over two parts of the system. They have control over the Apple TV, which now does support 4K HDR video streaming. And they have control over iTunes. So Apple, to their credit, is working with all the movie studios to get 4K HDR versions of iTunes HD movies that people can buy or rent and have bought in the past. And Apple says they're going to try to have those be exactly the same price, which is nice because nothing Hollywood likes better than gouging you on a version change. You already bought this once, but now we're going to give it to you in a different format, so we get to charge you again. And so it's nice that Apple's doing that. And Apple also says they're going to upgrade any movies that you've bought that come out in 4K HDR. They will automatically upgrade those to 4K HDR, for what you own. So that's really great. Similarly, Netflix is committing to doing 4K HDR pretty much right away, and Amazon with Amazon Prime Video is going to be doing it later this fall. Amazon has been talking about doing their Amazon Prime Video app for months now, and we'll have it some point, I guess, but it hasn't happened yet. So if you have all three of those things, you have the TV, the content, and the Apple TV, you can watch movies. I don't think most TV shows are being done in HDR, 4K HDR at this point. You can watch movies that are really, really gorgeous. So that's really the big win of the Apple TV 4K. It has some internal hardware changes that make all this possible. Most notably, it has an A10X Fusion chip. And Apple also bumped up all of its networking. So weirdly, the Apple TV had pretty anemic networking before. 100 megabit Ethernet and slower Bluetooth and things like that. So the new one will have faster Ethernet, faster Wi-Fi, faster Bluetooth, and all that should help. The one thing it doesn't have, somewhat oddly, is a USB-C port, and we're not quite sure how developers are supposed to interact with it because of that. The USB-C port was always how developers were able to talk to the Apple TV in the past. The one thing that Apple didn't do in any real way, which was a little sad, was they did not update the Siri remote. So the Siri remote, I don't happen to have mine upstairs, but it's this little rectangle of glass. You basically cannot tell which side is up. It's got flat spots on both the top and the bottom. The only asymmetry in the whole thing is the volume button is a sort of a long button, whereas the other side is the Siri button and the play pause button. So it feels a little different when you hold it upside down. Truly annoying. Also very easy to break. So a lot of people have gone to Amazon and spent $7 or whatever and gotten some kind of silicone case for it that makes it easier to hold and easier to figure out which end is up. Apple did make one change. They put a white ring around the menu button. So that apparently is going to solve everyone's problems. I was a little sad that the crack industrial designers couldn't think of anything more impressive than that.
We were originally thinking maybe it was going to light up, and so you could find it in the dark.
I would hope that it would at least be, like that glow-in-the-dark paint, but who knows? I somehow doubt it. So the Apple TV, you can buy a new one, an Apple TV 4K, with either 32 gigabytes of storage for $179 or 64 gigabytes of storage for $199. Now, first of all, don't buy a 64 gig one. The only reason to do that, as far as anyone can tell, and probably not even then, is if you play a lot of games that take up a lot of storage space. That would be the only reason to buy the big one. So there's no reason to go for the extra storage. And the problem is that the comparable devices from Roku and the like are about half the price. They're sort of in the $90 to $100 range. So it's a little sad that Apple is charging a lot more for this still, rather than competing in the market they're in. The main sort of new software feature that they announced is support for live sports and news. And they didn't really talk about the news, but the sports they were pretty pleased with themselves about. So you could, in theory, follow a team, and it would, bring up that team's game whenever they were playing, and you could see thumbnails of all the other games going on with the sports scores and the time left and stuff like that. So it looked like a pretty cool interface for people who really like live sports. It's unclear to me, honestly, a little how that's going to work. I don't know whether Apple has if it requires some kind of massive ESPN subscription package, or if Apple has organized it all, paid for it all on the back end somehow. Just we won't know that until it ships, probably. But it is good to see that happening, because that has been one of the criticisms of both the Apple TV, frankly, and sort of all of these devices, is that it makes it hard to cut cable if you really want to watch the game on Sunday. So what else? Anything else about tvOS 11? Apple said nothing about when it's coming out for older fourth-generation Apple TVs. We're anticipating September 19th with the rest of iOS 11 and watchOS 4, but who knows? Maybe not. Maybe there's something else that's holding it up. But since, once again, you can pre-order the Apple TV on the 15th and get it on the 17th, or on the 22nd, it seems to make sense that tvOS 11 come out for all the older ones as well. So there really isn't much else in tvOS 11 that's interesting at all. There's a new night mode which changes the kind of how bright the interface is. I guess it works a little better with AirPods, pairs more readily with AirPods, things like that. But honestly, for what is nominally a full version number jump, tvOS 11 is pretty weak. So a little sad to see Apple not doing more with this. They could, but they really don't seem to have done all that much there.
They did leave the existing fourth generation available for $149 in the 32 gig config. So if you don't have a 4K TV or don't anticipate you getting one soon,
the other thing I wonder a little bit, and I know my mug audience is, I don't think your eyes are any better than mine, but I'm not sure I can see the differences. There's a certain level of, by the time I'm wearing the right glasses and the right different distance away and everything, it just takes too much effort. So, I'm not usually watching TV for the best possible video quality. So I have to say, we're not getting Apple TV 4K. I just can't see any advantage to it. First of all, we'd have to buy a whole new TV, which I don't want to buy a whole new TV. Old one works perfectly fine. So it's a lot of money for very, very little benefit as far as I can see. But yes, the 4th generation Apple TV, just like it always was, remains on sale for $149. Still a little expensive, honestly. Why is it that much more than a Roku? Little too bad that Apple isn't taking this space more seriously. Maybe they will start at some point. Any other questions about Apple TV or tvOS?
Yeah, the 10-inch TV doesn't show any difference.
Yep, black and white, not so much either. Though, yeah.
Yep.
But if you hold the rabbit ears, you might, yeah.
It's like people that get the 4K laptop screen. Really? You spent that much more money on dots you can't see?
Yeah, right. The whole point is you can't see the dots. Yeah. Okay. Well, as I said, not that interesting in many ways, unfortunately. But so now we get to the good stuff. So first up was the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, and I think the word that really just defines these is evolutionary. So Apple, you might have been expecting Apple to do an iPhone 7S and 7S Plus, because they've done that, pretty much every other, sort of in this, the big lump, big leap, and then the small leap, big leap, small leap, big leap, small leap. So the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus really are more of a big leap. So they're named correctly in that way, but they're still evolutionary. They're not radical changes in quite the way that we'll see with the iPhone 10. So the really big thing that you notice on the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus is that the back is all glass. And I can't remember which one it was. Maybe the iPhone 4 was glass as well. That ring a bell, Steve?
Yeah, I think it was the 4.
And so the problem with the 4 with the back was, and you see I have a case on this and this one, is that it broke really easily. Glass being breakable, say. However, glass is also good for other reasons, better than metal. If you are going to do what Apple is making the marquee feature of the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, which is wireless charging. So you will not need to find your lightning cable and kind of figure out how to plug it in. Instead, you'll just be able to set have a wireless charging pad and set the iPhone on it, and it will charge. That's pretty cool, honestly. Lightning cables, they work pretty well, but it's always a fuss to have to plug them in, and being able to just set your phone down in the right spot is a good thing. So amazingly, Apple is not reinventing the entire wireless charging approach to the world. So Apple is one of the big proponents of not invented here, but so this time they actually are using a wireless charging standard called Qi, which is spelled QI. So I either have to spell it, or if I'm writing about it, I have to tell people how to pronounce it. Pronounced Qi. So, any event. The Qi wireless charging standard, don't know a huge amount about it yet, honestly, because I just heard about it yesterday for the first time. But it does look pretty neat, and IKEA has actually started to build Qi chargers into some of its tables. And so what that says to me is that it's got enough momentum that Apple sees that it's worth jumping on that particular bandwagon and supporting that one. And Apple is going to be working with the standards body to make sure to improve Qi going forward. So one of the things they actually announced is, and it won't ship until 2018 sometime, is what they're calling an air power charging pad. And it's just this kind of pancake-sized piece of white plastic, plugs in with lightning cable. But the Apple showed you being able to put a phone on it, an Apple Watch on it, and a case of AirPods. They'll have a new optional wireless charging case for the AirPods. So you can just get home at the end of the day, plop all your devices on this pad, and they'll all charge. And actually, even the iPhone will even notice that it's on the charger and notice the other things are on the charger, and tell you that it's charging. It's kind of a neat little demo. So wireless charging is going to be a big deal. You know, I said, you know, the Apple Watch kind of already does it, so that will be able to, you know, we're seeing how nice it is to not have to plug and unplug the Apple Watch. The other things that the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, you know, when I say they're evolutionary, they're pretty much the same size as 7 and 7 Plus. I actually went and compared the specs, and I can't guarantee that cases will work, but they should. You know, I sort of want to say they will because I could not find a single measurement that was off by more than 0.1 or 0.2 millimeters. That's really not very much. So they really should work pretty well. The new ones are just a little bit heavier. Apparently, they've got obviously the glass screen and the glass in the back, and then the innards of the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus is made out of steel. And so it's possible there's just a little bit more weight that comes from that steel because of, you know, using a little bit more steel, a little less aluminum. So as far as the screens themselves, pretty much what we had before. So iPhone 7, iPhone 7 Plus, just the same screens, with the addition of Apple's True Tone technology, which it has an ambient light sensor, and it checks to see, like, I'm in a room now that has very warm light, a fair amount of it, and warm light. And so it would actually, True Tone would actually be adjusting what I see on my iPhone to say, whoa, you're in a room with a lot of warm light. I'm going to tweak the colors and the brightness of the phone to to make it most visible in that conditions. So that's kind of neat. Another minor thing, they say the speakers are 25% louder and have deeper bass. This isn't nearly as big a deal for me as it used to be. Previously, I had a car that did not have a Bluetooth system, and so I used to set the iPhone in the cup holder, and I was perfectly happy when just to play music or podcasts or whatnot from the cup holder. And so Apple has really seriously gotten every model of the iPhone to be better at that. And if these things are 25% better, that's actually fairly impressive. So a lot of the effort that Apple has put into the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus has gone under the hood. They have an entirely new chip, the A11 Bionic. Apple chips are all A something or other, sequential number, and they've started to add names to them too, just because presumably it's more fun. So this immediately prompted $6 Million Man jokes and whatnot, but I don't know why it's Bionic exactly. And various other chips inside have been enhanced as well. And a lot of this is because one of the things that Apple's doing with iOS 11 is what's called colloquially AR kit. AR stands for augmented reality. So if you could imagine that, right now I had a virtual Viking helmet on. And the computer was somehow drawing that Viking helmet on my head, and as I ducked and moved and everything, the Viking helmet moved with me. That would be augmented reality. So it's applying virtual objects to live video of the real world and making it move realistically, keeping the lighting realistic, all that. And as you can imagine, there's some serious computation that goes into that. So it's pretty impressive stuff. Obviously, games are one of the big uses for AR, but I think we're going to see a lot of cool stuff that's not gaming related too. So AR is going to be something to really keep an eye on. So for instance, I've already seen demos of someone who was getting walking directions from maps, and it was actually showing him, like, he was looking into his iPhone. It was showing him video of the screen in front of the sidewalk in front of him and drawing the line to follow on the sidewalk. And so you could actually see the guy kind of walking around, following the blue line, which is pretty neat. I think that is, obviously just a quick example, but you can hold up an iPhone and it will recognize a skyline and tell you what the buildings are, or maybe what the mountains are, things like that. So it's kind of neat stuff that's going to be possible there. One thing that, of course, we didn't hear anything about, but I think within the 5-year, 10-year range, we will start to see Apple working on glasses of some sort. That walking around with your iPhone in front of your face, not a great experience compared to having a pair of glasses on your face. So it's going to take a while before all the technology can work. Guy who's actually worked in the field for a long time did a big article on why it's not going to be, the next couple of years. It's just too hard. But it is definitely the future. So worth keeping that in mind.
Yeah, will it warn you when the bus is coming? So don't step out in the traffic.
I was going to say, I see a bus. Yeah, hopefully the proximity sensor can work in the other direction too. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting. We've already seen some of this happening, right? With Pokemon Go, the big app where you see groups of teenagers kind of staring at their phones, like in a group, but everyone's staring at their phones, playing, doing this. So yeah, it is. You do need to be able to interact with the real world a little bit more sometimes than just the virtual AR part of it. The cameras in the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus have the same basic specs as the 7 and 7 Plus, 12 megapixels, blah, 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 dynamic image stabilization, all that kind of stuff. But Apple says they're better sensors. So this is one of those things where, yeah, they didn't maybe pack any more megapixels in, but they improved the sensors so there's sort of greater color depth, greater saturation, can bring in more light, works better in low light situations, things like that. I think the basic takeaway is, and this is pretty much true of every iPhone, is the new ones will take better pictures than the old ones. Simple as that. And, that's always a nice thing. And just like with the 7 Plus, the 8 Plus has two cameras. This is a 7, but it has two cameras up here, and it gets some additional cool stuff from those. So there's portrait mode, which takes picture. If you like, you could take a picture of me, and all the stuff in the background would be kind of blurred out. That's portrait mode. And there's a lot of computation that goes into that, as well as having two cameras. The new thing that Apple showed off, which is really, really cool, and is another instance of computational photography. This is like doing stuff that you could not imagine, but a computer can do. It's called portrait lighting. And what it allows you to do is to be able to change the lighting on your subject in real time as you compose the photo. And I mean, this is the same as from all the way of like, I think I want to brighten up the underneath, to I'm going to cut out everything behind the subject, and have it be this silhouetted out of darkness. And you get this kind of clever thing where you can just kind of it's like a semicircle, and you can just switch between different lighting modes to see what you like best. And you can change the lighting afterwards. So if you say, I didn't pick very good lighting for that, you can change it. This is mind-bogglingly cool. As with portrait mode from last year, it's, frankly, I suspect, so cool and so hard that it will only be available in beta at first. So I'm not even sure if it'll ship with the iPhone 8 Plus. And I don't know if it'll be coming to the iPhone 7 Plus. Apple didn't say anything about that, but I would probably guess not, given, again, the amount of computation that goes involved. So all very cool. Last little thing, Bluetooth 5 instead of Bluetooth 4.2 is kind of cool. And I noticed one weird tech spec difference that I don't understand. And Steve, I'll be curious if you noticed this. iPhone 7 just has NFC, near-field communication. The iPhone 8 says NFC with reader mode. What's reader mode?
Yeah, I was looking around and no one seems to know what it means.
No? Okay. Yeah, I've not run into that before, but I have to. It's one of those things where you notice a little niggling thing, and I didn't have time to research it, but I'll be looking into that. So, okay. So in terms of pricing and sizes, the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus are both available in 64 gigabytes or 256 gigabytes. The iPhone 8, the smaller one, is $699 for 64 gig, and $849 for 256 gig. The iPhone 8 Plus adds 100 to that, so $799 or $949. And there's only 3 colors this time: gold, silver, and space gray. I was never a fan of the rose gold anyway, so whatever. Same standard approaches. For those who are still put out about the loss of the headphone jack, Apple is still giving you a headphone adapter in the box. And as with other things, they'll be available for pre-order on September 15th and shipping on September 22nd. iOS 11, which is a whole huge ball of wax, and we probably shouldn't even get into because that would be literally the rest of the evening. I could talk about that for hours. Is going to be shipping on September 19th. I will simply say that I think iOS 11 is a very good update on the whole. It makes some clever changes. And particularly if you use an iPad, and doubly more so if you use an iPad Pro, it adds a lot of specific features that really change how the iPad can be used. It is nice to see Apple finally differentiating the iPad rather than just treating it like a big iPhone. So definitely take a look at that.
And it looks like Jason Snell at Six Colors found out that reader mode means it turns your phone into an NFC reader. So that you might be able to read NFC from something else, which could mean iPhone to iPhone payments.
Oh, maybe that. Well, yeah. I mean, we've already got.
Maybe Android to iPhone payments with
we've
NFC.
Already got, the Apple Pay person-to-person stuff is supposedly built into iOS 11, but it hasn't been enabled in any of the betas, so we haven't been able to try it yet. So one of the things in iOS 11 in Messages, they've sort of changed the interface so that you can get to the apps more easily. Messages apps, for the most part, are silly little sticker things, but there's a few that are cool. And one of the things that Apple's adding is Apple Pay, where you'll be able to do person-to-person payments. So you can just say, oh yeah, here's my $15 for dinner, and pay someone directly via your iPhone to their iPhone, or via Messages. And so maybe NFC is related to that in some way. I don't know. I think it's going to be fascinating to find out. Maybe it was just one of those nice little things they could add in, and maybe nothing does anything with it now, but developers will soon. So.
There's a question on whether it's Gorilla Glass or not. Apple has never said what brand it is, but on Corning's website, it says Apple is a customer.
Apple has definitely used Gorilla Glass in the past. I do not know if it is Gorilla Glass this time. Apple merely said this is the most durable glass ever. Who knows what that means? I do know Corning's actually obviously not far from here, so we hear periodically from people who know little bits and pieces about it, but they are very, very careful not to ever say something definitive. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's done via Corning, but I don't think you'll get anyone to really to agree to that.
And the problem with having glass on the front and back now is that you can break two different things when you drop your phone, which was a big problem on the iPhone 4.
Yep. And that's going to be, the problem is that, dropping it on asphalt is just a bad thing. And, if you break the back, on the other hand, if you break the back and it's just cracked, it's not going to change how it works in all likelihood. It may just offend you. So, the question is, if it breaks it enough that it actually is falling apart, then, that's more of a problem. So we'll see. The other thing I don't know, actually, I have not heard anything about, is how cases will interact with the wireless charging. So obviously they need the glass in the back so they don't have metal blocking the wireless charging, but I don't know if a case will cause too much space between the charger or not. Very hard to know. So, but let's face it, it's the 13th. We'll know this in 9 days, so we don't have to wait too long of a time. What we will have to wait a little bit longer for, though, is the iPhone 10. So whereas the rest of this stuff has been, is coming on the 22nd, the iPhone 10, before I get to any of the details, you won't be able to pre-order until October 27th, and it will ship a week later on November 3rd. So it's also going to be a bit more expensive, so also $9.99 for the 64 gig and $11.49 for the 256 gig. So, but what do you get for all that? What you get is mega cool. So, we've all seen, everyone knows what an iPhone looks like. You've got this rim around the outside, the bezel. And it's, I don't know, it's 1/4 of an inch on the side. Well, no, maybe 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch on the sides, and, maybe 1/2 an inch on top and bottom. That's a fair amount of space. And so what Apple has done with the iPhone 10 is they've eliminated the bezel. So the screen goes edge to edge, corner to corner. It's nicely curved. Like on this iPhone, you get a sharp corner. On the iPhone 10, you get a curved corner because it goes all the way to the bottom. It's really, really impressive. The only thing that you don't that breaks it up is at the top. There's what's called the notch, and so in the top center, you've got a sort of cutout, and that's where Apple has to put the cameras and various other sensors that I'll talk about in a minute. So this has been probably the prime criticism of it from people who frankly have way more time on their hands than I don't know what. They're like, oh, I can't believe that Apple is wrapping the screen around the notch. Well, whatever. So either they are or they aren't. You can't see. You won't see stuff there. It's just not that big a deal. It does look like I'm going to be getting one of these because it's sort of needing to stay up with the latest and greatest. So, come November 3rd, I'll tell you if the notch bugs me. But, from looking at it as it stands, I fail to see it being a huge issue. So, there's a couple of major implications, if you think about it, of losing the bezel. I mean, one is that little notchy thing at the top, but the other is, what about the home button? Where does the home button go? Well, there is no home button. The home button is gone. And so that has a lot of implications if you think about it, because you use the home button all the time. I mean, first of all, you use the home button to wake up the iPhone when it's asleep. Well, you can raise to wake still. That's a new feature. That's a feature that's been in the iPhone for a couple of revisions now. But you can also just tap on the screen of the iPhone 10 to wake it. So that's one thing. Siri. Right now, you press and hold on the home button to wake up Siri. You don't have to do that on the iPhone 10 because it has a side button. So just like the Apple Watch, where there's an extra button on the side, it'll have a button on the side, kind of like the sleep-wake button. It's a little hard to actually see what they're all like online, but you can just press and hold the side button to invoke Siri. Now, you can also, of course, use Hey Siri if you want to talk to it that way. So that's two things. Unlocking. This is the big one, right? So first we had slide to unlock and entering your passcode. Then we had Touch ID, and Touch ID works really well. Apple did a really nice job, particularly with the second generation of Touch ID as it got faster and faster. What the iPhone 10 introduces to eliminate the need for Touch ID is Face ID. So you hold it up, and in those cameras in the upper notch, they recognize your face, and they can do it in the dark. If you're wearing glasses, if you've grown a beard, if you've got a hat on, Apple claims it just works. Now, given that it actually failed the first time Craig Federighi tried it in the demo, we'll see. I mean, they're not shipping this for another month, so 6 weeks. So they've got some time to work out some kinks. But their claim is that it just works and it's just as fast. It actually even requires attention. So if you've got your eyes closed and hold it up, it won't do it. You actually have to look at it, apparently. We don't know, like, for instance, what happens if you're wearing sunglasses. Will that be dark glasses? Will that be a problem? Who knows? Identical twins could be an issue. Apple was careful to say that it was a 1 in 1 million false positive rate, but that would go down a lot with people who were related.
And I like how they used Spock and Evil Spock from Mirror.
The evil twin is a real problem. But that said, and I did actually check, apparently identical twins do not have identical fingerprints. So this is one place where fingerprints are just better. But that said, the fingerprint sensor had a false positive rate of 1 in 50,000. So if you put 50,000 people in the same room and had them all try the phone, in theory, you could get one person who would activate it incorrectly.
Steve Gibson actually talked about that on the Security Now podcast, and people were reporting in just their random friends. 2 or 3 people reported, yeah, my friend got into it with his fingerprint.
Could be. And, the thing is, of course, when your random friend gets in, it looks like it's got a very high false positive rate, but you don't know that your random friend isn't just the 1 in the 50,000. Yeah. You just... coincidences are work exactly like that. But that said, Touch ID has worked really well on the whole, but some people have trouble with it. My sister, for instance, is constantly forgetting her, so she has to keep retraining it for reasons I've never figured out. But we'll see. So Face ID, it sounds like it's going to be really cool, and it's really nice to see how Apple gets you more screen real estate. So that it is a lot more screen real estate. That's the other thing. So Apple's using a new screen technology called OLED, Organic Light Emitting Diode, and this is impressive stuff. And the screen, let me see, I'm going to find my stats here. It's 2436 by 1125. That's a ton of pixels. In comparison, the iPhone 8 Plus is only 1920 by 1080. So it's a ton more pixels even than the iPhone 8 Plus. And here's the thing. When you actually look at the physical measurements of the iPhone 10, its diagonal screen size, that's how they measure it, is 5.8 inches. The diagonal screen size of the iPhone 8 Plus is just 5.5 inches. However, the physical dimensions of the iPhone 10 are much closer to the iPhone 7 and iPhone 8, not the Plus. So for those of us who really, really don't like the big honkin' ones, the iPhone 10 provides a bigger screen than the big honkin' ones, while in the same smaller form factor of the 6 and the 7. So I think that's a really pretty impressive engineering feat. It's just a hair heavier too. It's just a few millimeters here, a few millimeters there, and a couple. I think it's like 26 ounces or 26 grams heavier. It's like the weight of a AA battery. So, and as I was saying before, they put more battery into it as well, so it's supposed to last 2 hours longer than the iPhone 8. So, just astonishing engineering going on there.
And we should also point out for our audience here that the OLED screens were developed by Kodak here in Rochester.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Very cool.
And sold to LG in 2009. So they licensed it to everyone and their brother, and then sold off the technology recently.
Looks like we have a question there.
Is the infrared camera cause the same type of damage an ultraviolet camera would do? And
I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't think so.
Infrared,
no.
Infrared's a completely different wavelength. I mean, it's like exposing yourself to like a hot fire. I mean, that you're getting infrared at a lower bandwidth. So I wouldn't think that would be any problem at all. Plus, I mean, there is a certain level of Apple's got to be.
Yeah, and it measures the dots that had the little pointy dot thing. What do they call it? The point projector.
Dot projector. Yeah.
Puts dots on your face so the IR camera can read it. So it's not a very long exposure either. Well, the face detection doesn't work if your eyelids are closed, but the camera would still be bathing your face. It just wouldn't match what you trained it when your eyes were open. Now, there's a question. If you train it with your eyes closed, does it work with your eyes closed?
Good question. We'll have to wait to find out.
Yeah.
Honestly, I seriously can't imagine there being any issue here. I mean, infrared just not really a problem. I mean, infrared will burn you if you're exposed to too much of it for too long. But this is, infinitesimal pulses. So
Another question
I really don't think that's an issue there. But in any event, the other thing I wanted to point out, though, is the other thing we're used to doing with the home button is going to the home screen, right? I mean, that's how you get to the home screen. And so with no home button, what you do is you swipe up from the bottom of the screen. And you can do that from from anywhere to get back to the home screen. But if you also pause briefly as you're swiping up, that will take you to the app switcher, which is kind of neat. And then if you you get this little kind of I don't know, it's like a bar at the very bottom, just a software-looking bar. And if you swipe left and right on that, that also will switch you back and forth between apps. So the one thing that's going to really trip people up at first who have switched from another iPhone is that Control Center is no longer a swipe up from the bottom of the screen. It's a swipe down from the top, we think, right of the notch. We're not quite certain about this yet. There's a belief that it's like the right of the notch gives you Control Center, and the left of the notch shows you the lock screen and what Apple calls the cover sheet now, where your notifications are. So that'll be the one thing that is actually different between the iPhone 10 and every other iOS device out there. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. And so many details to learn. So for instance, with Touch ID, you can enroll 5 fingers, up to 5 fingers, I think it is. And what most of us do, of course, is we only do 1 or 2 fingers, but we have our spouse or the child who always uses the iPhone, have them enroll a finger too, so they can open the iPhone. And it seems a little unlikely that it will be able to recognize multiple faces. So it's possible that if you share your iPhone with your spouse, they'll just have to enter the passcode. So passcode will always be a possibility.
In the back question, and then. Is the OLED screen more drop resistant than an LCD screen?
I haven't heard anything one way or the
neither
other,
have I.
to be honest. So, durability. Apple did say that there's the edge of the iPhone 10 is surgical grade stainless steel. I love how Apple always comes up with what grade of stainless steel it is or something like that. So yes, you can do surgery with the edge of your iPhone 10.
And it is the IP97 water.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it will be water and dust resistant at the same level as the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, which is the same as the 7 and 7 Plus. And my take on that is you don't want to take it swimming, but you might you'll be able to survive a drop into water, and don't leave it there. Get it out quickly. But though it's nice
flush.
to be able to. Yeah, don't flush. Right. It's like that will do bad things to your plumbing anyway. So
I don't think so.
How durable these new phones are going to be is going to be a real question. And again, we'll see whether people feel like they need to have a case on them for durability, and then if that will mess with the wireless charging. The iPhone 10 completely supports the wireless charging as well. So that's the same thing there.
Is it the same size SIM card, or is it a smaller SIM again?
I heard nothing about the SIM, so I don't know. I would guess it's the same size SIM, but who knows? Apple did say that they developed an electronic SIM for the Apple Watch Series 3, which was something like 1/100th the size of a nano SIM.
Yeah.
And hang on here, I'm just starting to get.
Because when you compare it to the watch, a SIM card, even the nano SIM, is pretty big, but on the phone, it's not that big.
Yes. And so, so it's, it's hard to know. Some of these specs Apple doesn't really share up front, and we have to wait until, as you say, until iFixit buys one and rips it into small shreds for science.
You can't get it with a headphone jack.
No headphone jack.
So, but it is water resistant itself. There's a headphone jack adapter that comes in the box, a lightning to headphone jack adapter.
And that is true of the iPhone 10 as well as the iPhone 8s. I probably need to mention this. I am not a huge fan. Apple made a big deal about how all this facial recognition technology will let you do other cool stuff, and they developed what they call Animoji, which are animated emoji, which will actually, you can have your face be talking into messages or something, and it will then put your facial motions and expressions and everything onto one of these animated emoji, and which you can then have deliver your message in messages. I can't tell you how utterly silly I find this and whatever, but so if you want to use animated emoji in your messages, have fun. You can have it do your face.
The 11-year-old in all of us.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'll probably try it once to prove that it works, but that's really all I can say. It just feels like one of those things. You sort of want to you see the Apple executives, who are all, of course, in their 50s and 60s at this point, I think, demoing this. You're like, really? You don't use this. So, but the other thing they when I was talking about the Viking helmet before is for augmented reality, they actually demoed Snapchat. App again, not used by anyone over the age of 14. Actually being able to affix masks onto your face, and then as you moved around, have it completely move with you and seem like it was painted onto your face. It was honestly a little creepy. So I don't know, but hey, some of that stuff will be possible.
We can all be luchadors. Lucha lucha.
Yeah, isn't that Jim Carrey movie, The Mask? Yeah, we can all do that. I was only, when I was writing this up for Tidbits, couldn't help but remembering there was a setting in Eudora, the email app that disappeared many years ago, that Steve Dorner, the author, added at some point under duress from his management, and the option was you was a checkbox that you could check or uncheck, and the checked was waste cycles drawing trendy 3D junk. And I always appreciated that. I was like, okay, you can just have this work, or you can waste some cycles drawing it as 3D, whatever. So yeah, it's technically impressive what they can do with the Animoji and the masks and all that, but yeah, whatever. So as I was saying, $9.99 is the price, is the premium price for the 64 gig model, and $11.49 for the 256 gig model. It's honestly, it's a fair amount, but now that we've started to become accustomed to how much these iPhones cost, when you're not subsidized from a 2-year phone contract, $9.99 doesn't seem all that unreasonable. Given what they've built into this, it's really pretty astonishing. The downside, of course, is, and I will know more about this on November 3rd, is that it might not work. It might be kind of a mess. Sometimes all this new technology doesn't really work so well on the first try. So, so if you don't want to be on the bleeding edge, I think the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus are probably a safer and certainly less expensive bet. But if you want to save money and you need a new iPhone, Apple's doing something which is really pretty astonishing at this point. They're keeping almost all the old iPhones available for sale. So you've got the iPhone, on the top, we'll go down. You've got the iPhone 10, and you've got the 8 and 8 Plus. Then you've got the 7 and 7 Plus. Then you've got the 6S and 6S Plus. And then you've even got the iPhone SE. Those are all still for sale, which is, it's a really interesting strategy. The iPhone SE, the lowest end model, starts for $349. So basically what Apple's saying is that the longer we keep these things around, the more the dropping price.
Uh-oh. We're losing you. Oh, you froze.
I know. It might be worth going to my system.
Uh-oh. Hang on.
All right. Let's see. Is that better? I had it.
You're back, but fuzzy. But that's at least you're back.
Okay. I'm guessing what happened was as 9 o'clock kicks in, various automated processes on my Mac start backing up and stuff. So, any event, I was just saying that what Apple's doing is, rather than coming up with like a low end and a high end model of everything and then sort of moving them all forward, it's just saying that we're going to keep all of these older devices around because, hey, they were magic last year. They're not any less magic now. They're just cheaper magic. So I think that's an interesting approach, and as long as they can all run the latest operating system, and I think it's not entirely a bad approach to provide different price points. It does make it a little bit more confusing.
It does let them say iPhone starting at $349.
Right, and ending at $1149.
Yeah. Although I did look up the Samsung, the new Galaxy S8, and that's $899 with 64 gigs, so it's a similar price. Although that does have a SD card to add storage to, so you don't have to pay a premium to get more storage in it. Well, the exploding battery problem they say they solved. This is the safest battery ever, according to them.
Safer than the last one, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else are they going to say? Really? We think it's going to work? So in any event, I'm actually, as I said, I'm pretty impressed with the iPhone 10. We'll see if the notch turns out to be annoying in real world. I really, really don't think so. There's a whole lot of journalism, and I use the term in quotes, to these days, which basically has to create controversy and attract attention and get clicks by saying stupid stuff. And so you can come up with any half-assed opinion and write an article about it, and then people will start to talk about it. we'll see. You don't have to have an opinion about every damn thing you don't know about. So wait to see what it's going to be like. My suspicion is, because the human brain is actually really, really good at this, that you will not notice the notch within 24 hours. That your brain will just edit it out. We are so good at that kind of thing. And everything becomes the new normal almost immediately. So I think that anyone who is concerned about that, is being way too worried at this point in time.
Renee Ritchie on the iMore show was calling it the unibrow, but didn't think that would catch on.
Yeah, not so much. So at some point, Apple actually has in the keynote, they have a diagram of all the stuff that's in there. There's like 7 sensors in that thing. I mean, I have to say, you want to talk about magic, the kind of stuff that Apple, and I mean other companies, to be fair, but Apple, I really believe, is at the top of the game in terms of manufacturing capabilities. The amount of stuff they can put into these devices is mind-boggling. That when they talked about how the facial recognition works, and it has the infrared camera and the flood illuminator and the dot projector, which puts 30,000 dots on your face to read the contours, because it doesn't work with a photo. You can't just hold a photo of your face up and fool it. It's got to be, and they actually had Hollywood mask designers come in, to build masks to see what would work and what wouldn't, and things like that. So, the level that Apple goes to is really, really impressive sometimes. And I'll admit, I sometimes wish they put as much effort into their software as they put into their hardware. That the hardware is beyond incredible. The software, sometimes you're like, really? You don't do that? How come?
I'm still waiting for the PC articles to come out and say, well, Android's been doing that for years. And a few of them have started.
Yeah. My understanding is a lot of the facial recognition stuff hasn't worked very well so far, and certainly Android tried, the button, the touch, the fingerprint sensors on the back, and that wasn't a big win. And let's face it, at this point in time, the smartphone is one of the single most valued and valuable devices on the planet, possibly of all time. If you think about the numbers of these things that have been sold, the billions of people that have smartphones, that's an indication of it's almost impossible to think of something which is completely new that no one else has ever thought of before. So, whether or not an Android phone maker thought of it and tried to implement it, maybe it didn't work. Maybe Apple had thought of it 2 years before that and couldn't make it work and therefore didn't put it in a product. So, who's first with any of this stuff? Really hard to say. And I think, even the patent and intellectual property system, it probably is not fast enough at this point for the kind of innovation cycles that they need in this market.
Built-in magnifying glass. There are apps that will do that. It will read the camera and blow it up on screen.
Just triple click. Seriously. Triple click, and that's what you get, is the magnifying glass. That's what in iOS 10, that's been there for a while.
Yeah, a lot of the universal access and assisted modes that we don't realize are there if you don't have one of those disabilities.
And actually, Steve makes a really good point that if you go into general settings, general accessibility, there are a bunch of settings in there that are really pretty useful. And, disabled doesn't necessarily mean that like you're half blind or something. It may just mean that you've got 60-year-old eyes and they don't work as well as they used to. I have a friend who's got his messages, the font size on his iPhone set so large, I don't know, it's like 50 point or something like that. It's cartoonish, but that means he can read his phone really easily. So hey, that's totally fine. But so yeah, I recommend you go in and check out some of those things. But the magnifier is brilliant. I use it all the time. Living in upstate New York, where we have to do tick checks all the time, the damn Lyme disease. Nothing better for seeing one of those stupid ticks than the magnifying glass with the iPhone camera on.
Yep. Yeah, you have to remember to turn that magnifier on. So yeah, look through the accessibility settings. There's quite a few of them in there that are pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, there's a bunch, and particularly for vision, I think. I mean, some of the zoom stuff is a little bit trickier, but just like just turning on larger text and bold text and stuff like that. But yeah, magnifier, you just go into settings, general magnifier, turn it on, and then you can triple click the home button anytime you want to magnify something. So I just have to mention this because I've had an iPhone since, I won't say the very beginning. I didn't have the very first one, but pretty close to it. And I just realized very recently an interesting little trick. I had, for some reason, I needed to take out my contacts downstairs. Tanya had gone to bed early or whatnot. I'd forgotten to bring my glasses downstairs. So I take out my contacts, and then I can't see because I'm very nearsighted. I can see about 3 inches in front of my face. So just on a whim, I put the iPhone in video in video mode, so I was getting a picture, and then I held it 3 inches in front of my face, and I could see perfectly. It was great. So it doesn't happen very often, but if you ever find yourself feeling really blind, you can put the iPhone right there and see through it. It was really kind of an interesting realization.
There is a blind mode built in that turns the screen off completely.
Oh, really?
For blind users who don't need the screen on, and therefore the battery lasts a whole lot longer. We've had some of our customers accidentally turn that on, and we couldn't figure out how to turn it off for a while because you can't see the screen to turn it off.
Yeah, question.
I think you might be in the double-click task manager, and you have to turn on the magnifier in the accessibility settings first. Yeah. Settings, general, accessibility. I can show that on the iPhone screen. Okay. So it's already on. So yeah, so you have to triple click pretty fast. So double click is click and hold is Siri. Double click is Task Manager. Triple click is the magnifier. Try swiping sideways. What does the slider say? Oh, that's zoom. So you might be conflicting between zoom and magnify. We'll figure that out. Yeah. Yeah.
Interestingly, I'm playing with it. I haven't done it much in iOS 11 since upgrading, and I'm actually getting some really weird behavior in the magnifier. So it's not working very well.
Yeah, we were talking at the office this afternoon about games that you swipe up from the bottom, and I have trouble where Control Center pops up in the middle of my game, and and I die. So now the same, similar sort of thing with the iPhone 10, where swiping up from the bottom now does home, and your game is going to quit. So now the game developers are going to have to tweak their games a little bit.
Yeah. Well, one actually thing to mention, just for everyone make sure everyone's aware of it, iOS 11 requires that apps be 64-bit as opposed to 32-bit, and all that really means is apps that are of a sufficient age old may not work.
And you may be already getting a warning when you open an app that says the developer needs to update this app. That's a way to know that they're 32-bit and won't work on the new OS.
And so if you go to Settings, General, and then scroll down to Applications and tap that, it will show you a list of the apps on your device which are not 32-bit and do not have upgrades. So you can see if there's any in that list that you really rely on. Wow, I've really gotten my iPhone into a complete state in this. I can't get out of the magnifier now. And this is the release version of iOS 11, supposedly.
So it's a way to do, the magnifier is a way to do macro photography too.
It's not very high resolution. It gets really fuzzy pretty quickly. So it can't drive the camera past some level of what it's capable of. So it's going to be doing it's going to be doing digital zoom in essence to be able to provide some of that. But it's still absolutely worth doing it. I mean, I use it like when you're peering at the back of some device where you need to get the serial number off of it, or you're trying to, see what little icons are on something. That's where it's really, really useful. Again, particularly if you don't have the right glasses on you. So, but all right. Any other questions about the iPhone 10 or any of the rest of this stuff?
Look. Well, that was another question. Why are there so many penguins?
I don't bring my penguin when I go places, so this is you only get the penguin if you get me from home.
Yep.
My penguin he was actually a present from a friend from Australia who actually brought him from Australia, so he's an Australian penguin. Usually the Australian penguins are smaller, but he's one of the larger sort.
Wonder if you had to buy a seat for him on the plane.
Luckily he's inflatable, so...
All right. What do you have upcoming? Any major projects coming up, or just concentrating on Tidbits?
Well, the big thing that we're doing these days, and I don't know if this is the kind of thing your store might be doing, Steve, is that we actually have. Everyone heard. I shouldn't say it, but probably hasn't heard since last year. We actually sold our Take Control books imprint. So we are no longer doing Take Control. Instead, we sold it to Joe Kissel, our main author, who is taking it up and continuing it with style. So that's been nice to see. He's got new books about iOS 11 and High Sierra coming out. Actually, they're out right now, and all the authors are busy updating them, and we're not, which is sort of a nice feeling. After 14 years, it was time to do something different, particularly for Tanya. So what we're actually focusing most of our attention on now is something we call the Tidbits Content Network. And the idea with that is that Apple resellers and consultants and people who need to have a marketing presence, they need to be able to tell their clients about what's happening in the Apple world, and need to do this. It's called content marketing, but they don't have time to write the content. And we're really good at writing content. So what we're doing is providing as a consultants and resellers and all those sorts, articles and tips that they can post on their store blogs, and fully professionally written, edited, and illustrated without them having to do anything. So that's a subscription service that's been going pretty well for us. We're just trying to build it back up so we can not have the income we're earning from Take Control before.
Cool.
I put it this way. I think that selling Take Control was very good for our marriage.
Good.
She was a little too tired of having to work all the time and juggle, because she would have 3 to 5 books in her head at once. That's just a lot to be, keeping going all the time and trying to schedule authors out, 3 to 6 months all the time, and, wrangling the cats. So it's just she's been pulling back a lot on sort of recovering from that, and doing a lot more work on the Tidbits Content Network stuff with me, because we still have to write a fair amount, and we always provide our clients full coverage of when Apple has an announcement like yesterday. We provide them with full coverage the day afterwards. So, it doesn't necessarily make our lives any easier on the day after an announcement, but it is sort of fun to be able to, give these people, really, really well written content that they can just put out, without them having to scramble or, spend a whole lot of time when they need to be doing something else, trying to put something together. And, honestly, we're probably better at it than most people. We've been doing it for 27 years. We better be.
Good. Great. Well, any last questions for Adam? All right. We want to thank you for coming, Adam, and remotely a remote telepresence.
Yeah, well, I said it's helped that I've been there so many times. So I totally recognize the room, and I know you're like Steve. You feels like you're right behind me. You're like right here on my shoulder. And
no, not like Donald Trump.
No, not like that.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Adam.
As much as I enjoy visiting and all, I must say I'm not sad about not having to drive home for 2 hours. So.
Yeah. All right.
Good night, everybody.
We'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. He lives in Ithaca area, so it's not too far. It's one of the reasons why we were able to get him to come in every year, which was handy. Let me switch back over to here. Yeah, sorry about that earlier. I was watching the YouTube feed, and I had the website in the bottom corner of the YouTube, and Adam was really big on YouTube, and it was opposite on here. Sorry. Alrighty, so we've got a few minutes left here. I want to make two pleas again. How many people don't have a backup drive where they have another copy of all their data? If you lost everything on your phone or everything on your computer, would you cry? Pictures, documents, contacts, pictures. People don't realize all the stuff, and I'm dropping again. People don't realize all the stuff on their phone that you can lose. We've had a customer come in today with a smashed iPhone and never backed it up to the computer, never backed it up to iCloud, never used Google Photos to back it up. Never backed up anything. You have to go out of your way to not back up your iPhone almost. And I've got 3 data recoveries running at the office now, where the computer crashed. And the backup is either 6 months old or they never got around to it. And all of their stuff is gone, all their photos, all their contacts, all their documents. You want to have a backup. And built into the Mac is the Time Machine backup software. And that's built in. It will back up automatically every hour. All it needs to do is point to a hard drive. And you can plug in a hard drive into your computer and be able to have a second copy of all your stuff. So if your computer dies, you have all your stuff still. If you accidentally, I got to switch the screen here. Hang on a second. If you accidentally lose your stuff, or accidentally delete a file, then it's still there. And I got to make this one bigger. So it works 2 different ways. If you delete a file, you've still got it. If your computer crashes, you've still got it. Let me get back to system preferences here. And so Time Machine's built in. What a lot of people like doing, and what we recommend in our office, is to use the airport time capsule. It's a network hard drive that sits on your network and backs up all of your computers to one drive. Especially handy with laptops who tend to wander around the house. So we hear all the time people forgot to plug their hard drive back in. So for a while, we'll say rubber band your power cord to your hard drive cord. So when you plug your computer in to charge, plug the hard drive in to back up too. But having a wireless backup to the time capsule is just an amazing thing to have. You don't have to worry about it. It automatically backs up every hour. And it backs up multiple computers. Apple's got a 2 terabyte and a 3 terabyte model. If you already have an Apple Airport Extreme router, you can plug a USB hard drive into it, and it becomes a network hard drive to back up all of your computers wirelessly on the network, including your laptops. And so when your computer crashes, I didn't say if, I said when it crashes, you have all your stuff, and you don't have to cry because you have all your stuff. The iPhones and iPads are a little bit different. You can back them up to the computer using iTunes. Let me bring iTunes open here. iTunes over the wire, or iTunes with iTunes has changed. We'll get into that in a minute. I don't have an iPod connected, so it doesn't show it. You can also do wireless connection. You have to plug it in with the wire and then tell it to do Wi-Fi syncing, and then it will do a Wi-Fi backup. But it's not automatic. You have to remember to back it up. So what you want to do on the iDevice, and let me see if I can bring this up. You want to make sure that you have a backup. You can back up to iTunes for free onto your computer, or you can back up to the iCloud. Let me bring this in. So if we go into Settings, and then your Apple ID, iCloud. You have an iCloud backup. This is my work phone. I don't need to back up my work stuff. So you can turn iCloud backup on, and it backs up to the cloud. The danger, and well, not really danger, the issue there is that Apple only gives you 5 gigabytes of free cloud space, which is barely enough for one device. And if you have a lot of photos, it isn't enough for one device. So in my 5 gigabytes, most of that is being used by a backup of my other work device. So what a lot of people end up needing to do is paying for extra cloud space. Fortunately, Apple has a 99 cent per month for 50 gigabytes, or $2.99 a month for 200 gigabytes. So if you have a lot of devices, you might need that bigger device. But 50 gigs is usually enough, and $12 a year isn't that much. And what that lets you do is use the iCloud automatic backup. It automatically backs up when it's connected to Wi-Fi and power, which is usually when you're at home at night charging it. So it backs up. You don't lose your photos, your contacts, any of the data, your game settings, the level you're on in the game. And that backs up everything. The other devices, or other settings, synchronize your contacts, calendars, reminders, notes to your computer. So you may not need to do a full backup if all you need to do is synchronize data. The big thing is always photos. When I take a photo on my phone, I want to make sure I have another copy of that. So I have Photo Stream turned on. And that sends the photo to my computer at home, and also my iPad. So that sends the photo to my computer at home, which then gets backed up on the time capsule. So the two options for photos in the iDevice is Photo Library, and that copies all of your photos to the cloud. But it counts towards your cloud space, so you generally then need to buy more space. Photo Stream does the last 1,000 photos. That's usually enough for most people to have 1,000 photos from their phone, copied to their computer. And by having that copy to your computer, you've got another copy. So if your phone crashes, they're already on your computer. When you get a new phone, it just brings everything back. The other danger, in just a second, with iCloud photo libraries, in addition to the space that's taken up, your photos are synced between all your devices. So if you delete it from your phone, it deletes it from your computer at home too. You have to keep that in mind. With Photo Library on, anything you do is done everywhere. You delete something, it's done everywhere. You crop a photo, it's done everywhere. You add photos, it's done everywhere. Well, that's okay. But when you delete a photo, it deletes it everywhere. So most people don't need to see all of their photos, unless you say you're a professional photographer, and you don't need to see all of your photos. You generally would want to have the photo library turned off. Question? For music, you tap the little cloud icon, and it will download the music to your device. So the other one of the options in the music player, I don't use my phone for music, so I don't know. Yeah, same thing, phone, pad. In the music file, you can see all of the music you've got on your device, or you can show music that you've got on the cloud. So when you buy a song, the iTunes store knows you purchased that song and it's on the cloud. You can then download it to your phone, to your iPad, to your computer. Okay, that's not a download then. That's an import into iTunes. So for CDs you already bought, you plug your phone into your computer and you tell iTunes to sync that music to your computer. There is a service Apple offers called iTunes Match, which is $25 a year, I think it is, that will put all of your music that you didn't buy from the cloud onto the cloud. Some people like that. Some people just want to manage their music manually. The one limitation with iCloud Match is it only does 20,000 songs. People that have really large music libraries, that could be a problem. So when you do buy something on online, on the iTunes store, you don't necessarily want everything on your phone or everything on your iPad. So that's why there's a little cloud icon. I'm only showing there it is. There's a little cloud icon. I'm showing my phone. I got to use the cursor over here. Little cloud icon will download that music, so it knows I bought this song on the iTunes store. I can download it to the phone if I want by clicking the little cloud icon. Generally speaking, you wouldn't want all of your music, just like you don't want all of your photos, unless you have a really big phone storage, because you don't want to use up all your storage either. It depends, which is a little tricky. So when you're in Photos, when you're looking at your photos, if you delete it from Photos, it does not delete it anywhere else. But if you go into Albums and open your photo stream, then you're deleting it from the photo stream. So it will delete it from photo stream on your other devices. If it hasn't made it into the computer, for example, then it won't make it into the computer. So you generally, with PhotoStream, you might leave photos open on your computer, so when you take a picture, it automatically gets sucked into your photo library. Rick? Yeah, we gotta move on to that. Any last question? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So one of the questions we get is what to back up onto. And there are a couple of different strategies. There's one that's been called the 3-2-1 backup strategy, which basically says you should have 3 copies of every file. So you got your master copy and 2 backups. And you should have 1 copy off-site. So cloud services like Backblaze or Carbonite give you a copy of the file off-site. So if you have a fire, flood, theft in your house, your computer and your backup drive sitting next to it are both lost. So that off-site is handy. Backing up to DVD is tedious and time-consuming and takes hundreds of DVDs in most cases. So generally we back up to hard drives now. You can use multiple hard drives. In Time Machine, you can tell it to use multiple different hard drives and then say rotate them out into the garage or an outbuilding or a safe deposit box. So you have 2 copies and one of them is off-site. We used to talk about CrashPlan, which is a cloud backup service. They have an option where you can back up to your friend's computer and then let them back up to yours, for example. They're going to stop doing that. So we can't. It'll work for another year, but they're not going to offer it, and they're not taking any new subscriptions, and they're going to cancel that service next year. So they're actually pointing people to Carbonite, which is interesting. Carbonite, Backblaze, most of them are like $5 a month per computer, and that gives you that off-site backup, and you don't have to think about doing it. If you want to do it in your own house, you can get, say, a data-ready fire safe, and that's important. Most fire safes are designed for papers. So, they'll survive fire, Fahrenheit 451. Hard drives melt a lot sooner than that. So you want a data-ready fire safe in order to survive in a fire. And most of the data-ready fire safes will also survive underwater. Because while the fire department is putting out the fire, your safe is going to be underwater. So SentrySafe, which was a local company that got sold recently, they have waterproof and fireproof safes among all the other brands as well. Yeah, there's fireproof hard drives. IOSafe is another company where it's an actual fireproof hard drive that you just plug into your computer, and it becomes your backup drive, and it's fireproof and waterproof and whatnot. They've got a neat video on their website somewhere. They build a bonfire and throw the drive in it. And then a couple hours later, when the fire dies down, they take the, here it is, they take the mechanism apart, pull the drive out, and the data is fully intact, which is pretty cool. So back up, back up, back up. Make sure you have another copy of your data somewhere, because your computer will crash. You will lose files, so you want them in another place. You get a warning when it doesn't back up for a while. Well, you have to hit the message and find out why it hasn't backed up. The first answer is often because your cloud storage is full. Yeah, second answer is sometimes because you haven't left it on long enough. So you have to leave it on for at least an hour for it to start backing up. And then you have to leave it on long enough to finish backing up. So if you wake it up, check your mail, put it to sleep, it never has enough time to do the backup. Right, and it also has to be connected to the internet, so typically your home Wi-Fi. So plugged into power and Wi-Fi, it should back up automatically. Another reason to have a backup is fake websites, fake ads, fake email. Let's see, let me do a fake virus ad here. I'll Google a couple of them and find some pretty good ones. People have been tricked by. So here's a common one. You get an ad. So you get a message on your computer. Technically, it comes in as an ad on a website, and that's how they're getting into your computer. You don't have to click on anything. We used to say, don't click on strange ads. You don't even have to click, because it's an ad that shows up. So on a website, there's an ad for tires, there's an ad for diapers, there's an ad for cars, there's an ad that says you have a virus, call this phone number. It's lying. Never call any phone number, especially if you don't have an antivirus program running, or the message doesn't come from the antivirus program you already do have. But you can't rely on that, because quite often you will get a fake message. Here, Firefox security alert. You might be running Firefox and think, oh, this is a real program. No, fake. Fake, fake, fake. You can sometimes tell because it's a web window. It's not an actual window from another program, which is a little subtle to figure out. But in general, ignore all of these messages. Right, so what can sometimes happen is you'll get these messages that take over the whole screen, because it's a window that fills the screen. When a website opens a window, it can say how big to make that window. If you try to close the window, it spawns another one. If you close that one, it spawns another one. Or what we've also seen is the close button is off the bottom of the screen, so you can't get to it. Some of them even talk to you now. You know, your computer's infected with a voice, and don't close the window or all your files will be erased. So far, they're still lying. Or they'll tell you to download an ad cleaner. It's fake. It's lying. Now, this one is kind of obvious because it's a Windows logo and Internet Explorer. If you're on a Mac, you're not running either of those. But if the message takes over the whole window, then one of the only things you can do is quit the browser. Command Q will quit Safari, quit Firefox. And when you're on the iDevice, it's sort of the same thing. You double tap the home button so you can quit Safari. Well, then, yeah, when the next time you get back in, there's a feature built in, a feature built into the OS that we're recommending you turn off now. So it's in System Preferences under General. When you quit an app, when you reopen that app next time, it reopens all the windows for you as a convenience. But that also reopens all the malicious windows that were open. So we're telling people to close windows when quitting an app, which is the way the system used to work. When you quit an app, all the windows closed and stayed closed. They added this feature a couple of versions ago, so when you quit an app, like you quit Word, you launch Word, and your documents are back open again. You quit Safari, then when you relaunch Safari, all the websites you were on come back again. And I just realized I'm not on camera myself. And so things come back when you, there we are. when you reopen the program. So we're recommending now turn that off, leave it off. So, and they changed the wording. In a previous OS, it said reopen Windows, and you want to uncheck that. In the current OS, it says close Windows, and you want to check that. So you want to look at the button that will not bring the Windows back again when you relaunch the program. So when you quit Safari, it closes the malicious window. When you reopen Safari, it won't show again. Probably. So don't go back to that website again. And we used to say don't go to seedy websites, like, you know, porn sites, pirate sites. But unfortunately, the bad guys are now buying ads on real websites. So there was a what was it? Forbes was a big one. Forbes, CNN, BBC. Ads are getting into legitimate websites for these fake tech support and fake virus warnings. And so you can be on all the all the good websites and still get one of these fake ads. So a lot of people like to run an ad blocker. In fact, I'm running one now called uBlock Origin. Unfortunately, many websites don't work if you have an ad blocker on. So you have to turn your ad blocker off. And Forbes was one of the big examples of that. If you have an ad blocker, you can't go to Forbes. So let me try that, going to Forbes now. I may have, yeah, I already did. No, I didn't. So here's the number of ads that uBlock has blocked. Just sitting here doing nothing, that counter is going to keep going up because more and more ads are coming in. And so what happens is Forbes will often, maybe they don't do it anymore. Forbes will block your website from getting there if you have an ad blocker on. So you have to turn your ad blocker off to go to Forbes, where you immediately got infected by the malicious ad that Forbes had on their site. Generally speaking, the site owners will catch that within a few minutes to a few hours. But if you happen to go right back to that website again, you may get that same malicious ad pop up. So generally speaking, when you get a malicious ad, don't go back to that website for a few hours, just in case they're still infected at the other end. Sometimes that ad counter really skyrockets. Yeah, I had to turn it off. So DNC is another one. So I've got, oh, that's good. I had to turn off my ad blocker for DNC in order to read any DNC article. Now this is becoming a problem now too. The security certificates. Many websites are encrypting the data so nobody can snoop on you. Unfortunately, people don't understand how this encryption things work, and you can get some of these certificates and you can say, oh, I don't know, just continue. So this is a warning that something is wrong. And let me see, I can show the certificate, but you have to know what it really means in order to know what you're trying to. So this is Akamai. So Gannett is using a content distribution network called Akamai to serve their stories. And what it does is it mirrors the stories around the world, so then you don't overwhelm any one server. So this is telling me that I'm trying to go to Gannett for DNC. It's really going to Akamai. Now I know that's okay, but the average person isn't going to know that, and they'll either just click OK. If it's a bad problem, they've clicked OK and let the bad thing happen. So if you don't understand what these messages mean, call somebody. Saturdays from 12 to 2, you can call Soundbites. You can call us at our office at Mac-Ave, or just hit cancel and go somewhere else for a while, just in case you don't know what's happening. And the malicious ads get more and more insidious, and they're getting to be better written. Where was a couple of them? A lot of times, the malicious ad is a contest. You won a contest. Click here. I won the Italian National Lottery a couple of months ago. Great! I only have to send them a $1,000 export fee to get the money out of Italy. Okay, because I won $10 million. No. you didn't win the lottery, you didn't, that no one is going to, no legitimate company now is going to send email anymore. Or if they send email, they're going to say call. Never call the phone number. Always look on your bank statement. So if you get a message from your bank saying there's a problem, call us, look on your statement and get the real number. Make sure it's the real number. Fake contest winnings. One of the problems we see happening is people will search for, let's say, Mac help. They'll search for Mac help. Google is pretty good about sending you to Apple. Or I want to find Apple phone number. And Google is pretty good about sending you to the right place. Other websites and search engines are not so good. We go to Bing and let's say Apple phone number. Are they a little better? They used to be terrible. They might be a little better now. Where you can buy ads. Yeah, this is good. So that's the real number. It's SOS APPL. No, My Apple. MYAPPLE. 800 My Apple. What will happen is you get ads. People will buy an ad saying Windows help. Let me try Windows help. Let me do it in Bing. Yeah. And you'll find a bunch of ads will show up at the top of the search windows. Here's an ad. Here's an ad. Here's real Microsoft. You might not notice it being 3 or 4 lines down. And you can end up with fake tech support. They might be a real company. They might be a fake company just trying to steal your money. You've got problems. You better let us remote into your computer so we can control your computer and fix the problem. What's your password? And then they'll rummage around your computer, finding passwords, finding bank account numbers. We had one customer get caught by this, and they were taking so long on her computer, she went to bed and left them in her computer all night long. So then we had to go down, clean out the system, tried to tell her what was wrong, don't do that again. A year later, they called back, and she let them in again. And so you have to be really careful about fake ads, fake tech support. We're getting phone calls now. Well, phone calls have been around for a while. You get a fake phone call from this is tech support. There's a problem on your computer. No, it's not. What was one we had today? Oh, a customer called. Microsoft licensing was calling. This is not a sales call. Your license is about to expire. You need to renew your Microsoft Office license. Okay. They coincidentally had Microsoft Office license. They may not have. But you could get tricked by that. Give them your credit card number to renew your license, and they steal your money and it's gone. If you're lucky, they just steal the money once. They don't sell your credit card numbers to everybody else. So be very, very careful about fake ads. And as my final act here, I'm going to run a video that we put together on our website. I got to talk to Tyler about why this is running so slow, speeding up. So we have some internet safety blogs, and one of them is how to tell if an email is a scam. And this is a cute little video. Can I get it to fit into the screen? There we go, and we'll play. So how to tell if an email you got is real or fake. Some 5 telltale signs to let you know that it's fake. So here's a message we got supposedly from PayPal. And there's a problem on your account. You better log in and update your information. So we don't want anyone to really access our account, right? So a couple of things are wrong. Spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, because most of the scammers are not native English speakers. Not to say all foreigners are bad, but the scammers are not native English speakers. Logos are wrong. That's not the PayPal logo. It's the word PayPal in a font. You may not notice that, but go to paypal.com yourself to be sure it's the right. So in fact, in this case, go to paypal.com yourself. So the message coming from or going to might be weird. And this is actually a homophone compromise where instead of showing actual letters, they can show graphics as the URL. So if he didn't have that feature turned off, it would have said apple.com or paypal.com at the top. Now here's another tricky one. Look at that A. That's not an A, that's an alpha. And then the P is not a P, it's a rho. So they are using the wrong characters, but in a font that looks close enough to the right character. A lot of times we see the fake email, they don't even bother disguising the return address. And so it'll say, PayPal at, gmail.com. Well, that's obviously wrong. But enough people get tricked by it that they can make a ton of money. So don't be one to get caught by fake email, fake phone calls, fake messages. If you, yep. So PayPal.ru, the RU is Russia. We half joke that since the collapse of the Soviet Union, a lot of KGB officers are out of a job, and they have auctioned their service off to the bad guys, and they're pretty good, some of them. You may have heard about ransomware, where your data is encrypted unless you pay the ransom. Fortunately, we don't have any of those on the Mac yet, but there are fake ransomware messages. Pay the ransom or to get your data back. It hasn't really done anything to your data, but people are paying the ransom anyway.
Okay, that should wrap it up. We got 5 minutes to pack up and get out of here.
So this Saturday at 1 o'clock is the Green Apples meeting at the JCC. Before that, from 12 to 2, is the Apple Soundbites radio show that I'll be on. Bob Hoey, who's not here tonight, will be doing his Green Apples from 1 to 2:30, and then the Q&A is from 3 to 5 at the JCC. Sorry about that. The 1 o'clock meeting is at Bob's house. And if you're interested in how the club works, next Wednesday you can come to the board meeting, and we'll probably appoint you to do something.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, we'll see you all next month. And we don't have a topic yet for next month, do we? But it will be October 11th.
I know that Todd will be doing a 20-minute on Cloud Checker.
Cloud Checker, and we're thinking we'll probably do something on iOS 11 because it will be out by then. All right, thanks for coming.